are some countercultural secrets to joy. That's the topic we're going to be addressing today on Flourish-Meant. I'm your host, Tina Yeager. Today I have a brand new guest, and her name is Beth Bodie. She is a speaker, a coach, and a leader, and she is on mission to empower others to embrace their unique gifts and callings to build God's kingdom while living a healthy and joyful life. Welcome, Beth. I'm so happy to have you on Flourish-Meant today.
Thank you, Tina. I'm so honored to be here today.
So, Beth, can you talk about some of your favorite tips for looking into some countercultural ways to really build and strengthen the joy that we were designed to experience in this life and in the next?
Absolutely. One thing that I recommend that my clients do is keep a joy journal. So every day being on the lookout for something that brings them joy, whether it is a big experience or something small, like, wow, I went and picked some wildflowers and put them in a vase on my table, something and anything that can bring them joy. And if they haven't done that by the end of the day or found it, then they need to seek it out because there is so much joy around us that we often forget. And then looking at this list and asking the Holy Spirit to help you create core values and life rhythms that you live by. So for me personally, my phone is off on Saturday mornings until noon, and I do not make plans on Saturday mornings, typically, unless it's a special situation. But I need that Saturday morning to process the week, to be with the Lord, for Him to make sense of what the week looked like, to wait for ways to do things differently moving forward into the next week, and just to be still and rest. So that is something that I stand by and live by. And fasting is also a rhythm that I incorporate into my life. So I encourage people to potentially incorporate that into their life. But I will say one tip that is maybe not a favorite tip, but it's something that our culture needs more of, and that is grieving. And I don't want to talk about joy without first talking about tears, because Psalm 126 talks about that we sow in tears and we reap a harvest of joy. And if I don't actually grieve and process life and cry, which, by the way, tears are so holy and so healthy, they release toxins and stress hormones. So crying is something that I think is so overlooked and under talked about. So the more that we can sow in tears, the greater our joy actually will be. So if I'm living my life and I'm not actually processing my feelings with the Lord and grieving the things that actually are really hard in my life, I'm going to probably look for some pseudo joy things in my life to make me feel joyful, which is way more like temporary than it is lasting and not healthy, because it just usually leads to addiction or leads to some sort of counterfeit joy. So all that to say, helping people learn how to grieve and cry and sit with Jesus and just completely lay their heart down at His feet, to weep, to wipe, to imagine wiping His feet with our hair and with our tears. Like, it's a beautiful thing, and that actually allows for more joy.
That is a fantastic suggestion and completely countercultural, because we want to avoid pain in our current culture. So addressing it and walking through it, as the psalmist David said, walking through the valley of the shadow of death, not around it, not trying to go over it, but going through it with the Lord, not on our own, but with the Lord. So that is just tremendous advice. I love that so much. Let's talk a little bit about what you said a few minutes ago with fasting. There are different types of fasting. Can you get into that a little bit? It's not always about food, is it?
It's not always about food. I will say biblically, like, the most common thing we see is food, but for some people, food is not possible. If you are a woman, for example, trying to get pregnant, or you've delivered a baby recently and you're breastfeeding, like, it is not wise to fast from food. And other people, for women or men who've struggled with eating disorders, that it might not be a wise thing to remove food from your diet if that will trigger something unhealthy. But for other people who are in a season where they can actually fast from food, like, I believe it's actually a really, really powerful method of fasting. But I've also seen fasting, social media can be really helpful. Fasting shopping is something that I did during Lent, and it was really powerful because I saw how often I go to Amazon to buy things or run by the mall to just pick up something when I actually don't need to. And what's the underlying reason for that? So yeah, there's so many types of fasting, but I think that doing something where it's a monthly rhythm or a weekly rhythm is really powerful. And even if it's like fasting one meal a day, not eating breakfast. So we could call this intermittent fasting, where we eat only within like a 6 or 8 hour window. There's so much beauty in that, because You get to use that time in the morning. You're not preparing breakfast and you're not actually eating. And you have more energy that your brain and your heart get to just be fully present with the Lord without actually, there's no energy being spent digesting food. So I think there's something really beautiful about an intermittent fast, or people who maybe struggle with sugar addiction, which is something have been a long time. I've been on a journey of working on the sugar situation here, doing like a 40-day sugar fast, or not eating sugar on the weekends. Things like that can be helpful for people who are trying to be healthy with like gluten or dairy or alcohol or caffeine and coffee. There's so many different ways, but bottom line is ask the Lord what he has for you. Ask the Holy Spirit to lead and guide it. Because if it's of him, he's going to sustain you. But if it's not of him, if it's just on our own flesh and just doing it for whatever reason, without any sort of spiritual purpose, that's not always the best.
That is so wise, to make sure that you're doing your fasting for the right reason. And with regard to joy, when you're looking at what your joy stealers might be, fasting might be a great litmus test. Like you were saying, one Lent, I fasted from complaining. I didn't realize how much I complained until I was fasting from complaining. So you can see what your joy stealers are by implementing a fast over those things, couldn't you?
Absolutely. I love that term, joy stealers. I've never heard of that, Tina, but that's good. That's really good.
So let's talk about some of those areas of life that you get your clients to look at during a silent retreat. What are the areas that people really need to look into in their lives in order to recognize what they need to change?
And every person is so different. And the way that I lead silent retreats is that they are completely Holy Spirit led. I'm just there to help facilitate the actual space, the food, a few exercises here and there, and this like just overall making sure that the atmosphere is like filled with God's presence and that he has a space to move and do what he wants to do. But the bottom line is that it's all about the Mary Martha story. Like, I'm going to point you to the feet of Jesus, because it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what a self-help book says. It matters what he says through his written word, through his spoken word, through nature, whatever that looks like. But quieting our soul is sometimes can take days and days. So for a weekend silent retreat, I pray for multiplication of time, that every attendee is able to enter the presence of God very, very soon on, and that breakthrough happens immediately. And for some people, it actually hasn't happened until that Sunday morning. But every person who's come thus far, they've actually received some sort of revelation or breakthrough. And so I do help lead and guide exercises, where that first night we do an exercise where the Holy Spirit speaks to them and they journal out how God feels about them. Because often, we know in our head we're loved, we're delighted in, he's pleased with us, but are we actually believing it? And so to write it down on paper is really powerful. And we do that through some instrumental music. And then on Saturday, we have a few exercises with worship music and some prompts to ask the Holy Spirit, like, okay, what do you want to do about this area of my life? Or some ways to help them practice asking questions and listening. And so that's the big thing, is like learning how to sit and listen and live a life that's based on Psalm 27 of going into his temple and like sitting with him, gazing upon his beauty, inquiring him, seeking him. And inquiring requires not just asking questions, but also listening. And so helping them listen is like so important. And by the end of the time, I pray that they have come back to life again. If they've come in feeling like they don't really have much life in them, that they're well fed, that they're well rested. And if maybe they need to take just four naps on Saturday, that can be the most holy thing they do, and inviting the Lord to meet them in their physical naps. So at the end of the day, each retreat is different. Each group of women is different, but always it's about the Lord and what he wants to do in each of the hearts of the women who attend.
Jo Beth, did you ever go through a time where you were depleted of joy and you really needed to walk through some of these things that you're talking about, or other things, in order to be restored by the Lord? And what was that like for you?
Absolutely. I do feel like some of these retreats for me that I've taken have been at pivotal seasons of my life, as far as before a new chapter unfolded. So I did a 4-day silent retreat at Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky back in 2013, when I was on the verge of, little did I know, moving to Rwanda for 5 years, which I thought maybe the Lord had a change for me, maybe like getting a dog, or maybe like moving to East Nashville from like Sylvan Park. And then it kind of became more like, maybe I'll move to either coast, but Lord, have your way. I'm almost 30. Like, I'm not where I thought I would be in life. So do whatever you want to do. And so I started praying a bold prayer January 2013. And in April, he still had not shown me what that was. Although my hands were more and more open and loose to whatever he wanted to do. So I did a 4-day silent retreat at this monastery. And I honestly didn't get any sort of major breakthrough until the very last day. I was on a walk through the actual garden they have there. And it was one of those times I heard the Holy Spirit whisper something so profound. And this was back before I got used to hearing his voice, but I heard him so clearly say, "You are mine. I've got you. Trust me." And that was all I needed to hear. So I left that retreat and I said, "Okay, Lord, okay, let's go." So I went back to Nashville, and a week later, an opportunity to work for this Christian ministry nonprofit in Rwanda opened up, and it was the right thing at the right time. It's so divinely aligned, and I was able to say yes without a shadow of a doubt and move into that next season. So I really believe that those 4 days at that silent retreat prepared my heart to know that the Lord had me and that he had great plans, that I could trust him. So when that right opportunity came, I knew it was him, and I was able to take a leap of faith and not look back.
What are some final things that you want to make sure that you leave with the audience to inspire them to live their fullest in the joy of the Lord today?
Yeah, I think I want people to know that if you're not feeling joy, that's okay. I've also been there, Tina, many times, and I don't want people to look at this girl and be like, "Who is this girl who, whatever?" Like, yeah, there have been a lot of tears, a lot of tears on my face, a lot of tears on the carpet of my home, and but it leads to more joy. And if it weren't for the tears, it wouldn't be for the joy, and it wouldn't be for abundant flourishing in life. And so, anytime I start to feel like my heart is off, and I find myself going to a bakery and buying baked goods for no good reason, probably my heart needs some tending to, and I need to actually be like Mary and put myself at the feet of Jesus. And so it's a day-to-day journey, and it's a day-to-day wrestle and struggle, because we know we have an enemy that is after us and doesn't want us to live joyful lives. And so at the end of the day, like, it's a battle. And so just know that, like, we are promised joy, and Jesus came so that we could have his joy and that it would be abundant and overflowing. And so what is it going to take? Like, I just want to encourage people to push back on culture. If that means signing up for a silent retreat or going away for a weekend, if that means doing a fast, as scary as that is, if that means turning your phone off for 24 hours, like, do whatever it takes to put yourself at the feet of Jesus, to let him tend to your heart. And his hands are so safe. For a long time, I didn't believe they were. So that's a whole nother story of the journey of inner healing that I've been on. But I know he's safe, and I know he's trustworthy, and it's worth taking the time to go low and to sit at his feet.
Thank you so much, Joy Beth. This has been a tremendous conversation. I really appreciated it. I hope that all of you listening have enjoyed it too. Joy Beth, how can people get in touch with you, stay connected with you, and continue to follow you online?
Yes, please come follow me on Instagram at joybethbodie.life. And then my website is joybethbodie.life. And there's a page for retreats. There's a page for coaching as well as for speaking. And so I do coaching programs called 40 Days to Fuller Joy that are seasonal. I do 5 programs per year, and I'm piloting a group coaching program right now. So stay tuned, follow along, and I would love for you to reach out with any questions that you have. And it would be an honor to partner with you in your pursuit of greater joy.
I hope that all of you listening were inspired to seek more joy in your lives and will connect with Joy Beth. And of course, I also hope that you hit subscribe and come back for the next episode of Flourish-Meant.